Well, Brian O'Connor just laid out his transfer portal strategy, but is he betting on the right players? High school talent or portal vets? We're breaking down the plan and whether it actually makes sense.
You are Locked On Mississippi State, your daily podcast on the Mississippi State Bulldogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Jaron Spore. I'm a national college football writer at Athlon Sports. That's Landon McBride. We got a baseball packed show for you today. Brian O'Connor talked a lot during his press conference. We've talked about some of it this week, but some of his interesting comments were also about the transfer portal. He kind of laid out his strategy about the portal and will he prioritize that? Will he prioritize high school more? That's something that we talked about could be a concern, but we didn't think it would be, but we wanted to hear what his strategy would be. He laid that out. Also, some Diamond Dogs got some more postseason honors. We'll kind of break that down. And next up in Starkville also has a little interesting nugget about something that happened a little earlier this week that we weren't able to talk about. We'll talk about that a little more in that segment. But let's first break down what he talked about in his press conference about the transfer portal. And this is via the Clarion Ledger. They're the ones who actually put this quote out there. But he said he was asked about his what he kind of likes to do because Chris Lemonis was really transfer heavy. He averaged 9.75 incoming transfers the past 4 seasons. So he really relied on the transfer portal. So O'Connor was kind of asked, what do you believe in? And he said he really believes in the high school player. He said the high school player has to be the foundation of any consistent, successful college baseball program. He said it starts there because you bring them into the program and you have an opportunity for 3 or 4 years for them to continue to develop, and you have a plan and understand what you have coming back the next year. But he's not against the transfer portal. We'll get into exactly how many high school guys he wants to have each cycle here in a second. But kind of what's your thoughts? I mean, it sounds like he wants to build a program based off of high school recruiting.
And I think that's really the way to do it in baseball because there's so many people on a team. You know, you have 9 on the field at each time, but your pitching staff is probably, about 10 people deep that you really rely on. Obviously, there's going to be more, but that's what you're doing. So you can't go too heavy in the transfer portal or you're just going to be picking off the scrap heap at some point. So I think it is very important to get, and he mentioned, I think he said about 8 to 10. You get about 8 to 10, you got high school kids in, especially if you get highly recruited guys. If you're doing it right, developing guys, when you bring those 8 to 10 in, they're not going to play a ton that first year. Maybe like the best 2 break your lineup, but the 8 to 10 you recruited over the last 2 years, that's who's dominating your playing time. And those guys fill the gaps. And then you look to find the really good players in the transfer portal. You go find the huge bat that you don't have, the ace that hit the portal. You just go after those guys to plug the holes.
Yeah, and I like that. That's what you said at the end, because that's what I was about to kind of talk about is you have to kind of base your strategy, I believe, off of the team you have. And overall, you want to be more developing and getting these guys out of high school. That's kind of how you want to build the program more than just being so reliant on the transfer portal every year. But you might have a team that is got guys that aren't going to go pro because it's like it's somewhat of a veteran team, but it's not so veteran where they're eligible to go pro. And you just know, like, man, they just need these kind of guys. And so we have to go a little heavier in the transfer portal because we need guys experience to be able to play well in the postseason compared to a high school guy who's going to be inexperienced. And so that might determine, do you take 8 to 10 or do you take 5 that year? Just stuff like that. And so I just think you have to be flexible. You can't just be stuck and either way. You can't be stuck either way. Because there's going to be some years that it's like, okay, we're young. We need to build with some young guys. Let's go more high school heavy than transfer portal. And so you just have to be flexible, in my opinion.
Yeah, you do. And the baseball transfer portal is not like the basketball or the football portal where, there's a ton of game changers entering that portal every year.
Right.
Typically, if a guy is going to be someone who can change your program, you have either scouted him from a lower level or at a school that just doesn't have a good baseball program, so he's being overlooked, and you're hitting that. And hats off to your coaches and scouting team for finding that guy. Or the guy is just going to go pro. Like, that's
Right.
just what it is. So it'll be a lot harder to build a sustainable program just going into the portal every year, year after year after year. So you do need to get to a point where, yeah, you're looking at it, but you're looking to find 3 or 4 guys to kind of fill out your roster, plug the holes, maybe find that diamond in the rough.
Yeah, and you said that you thought this was a really good plan for baseball, and I understand what you're saying with that. I just think it's an overall good plan for all sports because,
Well, me
and he
too. I'm
talks
just
about
saying,
it.
I was just saying that, like, the portal is not what it is in other
Right,
sports.
right, but he talked about this too. He said that when it comes to high school guys and recruiting high school guys, you're much more likely to keep those guys from entering the portal and things
Yeah.
like that than a guy that you got from the portal. Because if you got him from the portal, then obviously they're not someone that's just, I hate to say like super committed, but that's kind of how it is. Like it's not someone that's like, now he might find a school like Ace Reese. He's found Mississippi State. He seems to love it. He came back. Like I'm not saying those guys don't exist, but so I don't want to make it sound like all the guys in there are like, oh, they just don't commit to anything. Like that's not what I'm trying to say. But
Right.
it's just if you get a high school guy to come and then you develop them and you show them like, hey, I am the right coach, they're more likely to stick around. And especially when you got a school like Mississippi State that is so committed to baseball, that helps with your overall morale of the team, your overall culture of the team, like that you're trying to develop. That is better than adding transfers in because a lot of those transfers are there for like a year. And so they're not going to be like, they might buy into that culture. Not saying there's not guys like that, but overall,
Right.
they're probably not going to be full in on the culture. And we talked
Mhm.
about it with basketball. A lot of times those guys are coming in like, hey, I need a big year so I can go pro or go do whatever I want to do. And there might be sometimes they get a little selfish because of that.
Yeah, that's really something you have to worry about. And I want to bring this up because we've talked about, we've talked a little about his high school recruiting, but we've also mentioned it in passing that some of these guys that are currently committed to Mississippi State could go pro, like the high school guys. There's one that most likely will, and then there's, I believe, 2 others that are on that verge where if they go a little bit higher than they're projected, they might not go. And so O'Connor said, I have never and do not talk a player out of signing out of high school. What I talk to them about is between the age of 18 and 21, how do they want to live their life and what do they look like their development path is, and then goes on to explain how going straight to pros is very different from going to college.
Right.
And, you can kind of be, you're still going to be training a lot, but when you're in college, those coaches, like, they're not to say that minor league coaches don't care about those players. They do. Watch
Right.
any video of minor league coach, but it's just a different relationship. And, some kids may want that. Some need it. Like as talented as some of these 18-year-olds are that make it to the majors by 20, 21 years old, they probably could have gone to college and had a better experience going up through that development path.
And I'm glad you brought up that comment about when he was talking about just the high school kid and how he or the kid that is thinking about going pro and all this stuff, and he doesn't really talk him out of it. He just kind of explains like all the development you can have, and then he kind of explains like what the pros and cons. These are the pros of college, and these are pros of going pro, and then like what kind of lifestyle do you want to live? Like I love that he just gives them facts, and I wish more coaches were like that because I feel like a lot of coaches go in with almost their own selfishness and their own agenda that they want to come in and they're like, hey, I know I need this kid back. So I need to maybe tell him that, oh no, it's not, you shouldn't go pro because of blah blah blah, like when in reality the kid probably is ready to go pro or whatever the case may be. But I really respect the coaches that are genuinely putting the kid over them, and genuinely putting everything over them, and when it comes to that stuff. So I respect that a lot.
Yeah, everything, and I mentioned this earlier with some of O'Connor, the quotes that we've heard from his ex-players, some things he said about how he puts relationships first. He cares about the kids, not just as ball players, but as humans and what kind of man they're going to be. And, that's something that's very important. That's what we don't think about when we're sitting here looking at, box scores and end of season records and the trophies at the end of the year. Yeah, we care about this. We care about what happens day in, day out, Mississippi State for the rest of our lives. But those 2, 3, 4 years, that shapes that kid into, what happens the rest of their life. So to have a coach who, one, has proven he's going to hang a banner while coaching this way.
Right.
That's amazing. You hit a home run there.
No, yeah, you're exactly right. But all right, so coming up next, couple of Diamond Dogs got some more postseason honors. We'll tell you who and what they got. That's coming up next.
Ever check your bank account and wonder where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Surprising insights: when I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. It always sneaks up on you, those extra charges that hit you when you order food. But now I budget smarter and save more. With all-in-one convenience, instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. The easy collaboration managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year.
Well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, so Ace Reese and Noah Sullivan both received some honors. Ace Reese was selected to the All-Region ABCA Rawlings All-Region South First Team, and Noah Sullivan was announced to the second team. So multiple honors for Ace Reese this offseason, and then obviously, like I just mentioned, Sullivan got one as well. So congrats to them too, but kind of what was your thoughts on that?
I mean, hats off to two of them. Like when we were talking about throughout the season, the two guys who kept showing up, doing big things with the bats were Noah Sullivan and Ace Reese. When one of them wasn't hot, the other one was. So it's not surprising that the two of them both took some honors. And with the season Ace Reese had, we talk about it all the time, but what he did his first year at Starkville is just, he went off. The fact that he was ready to come back, it's just exciting to see that. But hats off to them for that. And perfect game, named Ace Reese third team All-American. So, more honors. He's going to have to get a new trophy case to put all these in by the time he's done.
Yeah, no, he's definitely going to. And that was just a cap for a great season. And I'm glad to see Sullivan to get kind of announced too. And with this, there's now been 75 Mississippi State players selected to the All-South squads. A combined 93 times since the Coaches Association began announcing these teams in 1949, and at least one Diamond Dog has made the ABCA South team since 2016, with 24 total taken. There were no all-region teams, obviously, in 2020, but just an incredible season. And like I said, I want to touch on Sullivan just for a second, because he's a guy that's had such a great year, and I just don't feel like he's overall getting as honored for it as he should be, if that makes sense. Reese gets all the accolades, and understandably so. I'm not saying that's wrong, but he deserves some kind of recognition.
Oh, absolutely, he does. Because we talked about him a lot when we first got on here. We were frequently talking, Noah Sullivan had 2 home runs. Sullivan had a home run this weekend, things like that. But then he kind of he didn't really go quiet, but he started getting overshadowed by Ace.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I mean, that season's, I mean, and it was a little bit of a step down from his previous year in terms of power. I mean, he looked 2 home runs less, 10 RBIs less, but I mean, his average went up 21 points from his, previous season. Also, just realized me and him have the same birthday, so shout out Noah Sullivan for that.
So, and
I mean,
even even more for a congratulations. No, but that's pretty funny that you have to say a birthday. But yeah, I mean, it was good to see him get some recognition for the year, and got to show off that great mustache. You know what I mean?
oh
When you
yeah,
get that award, we've talked about the mustache many times, but he had 15 home runs, 16 doubles, 6.45 power rating, on base percentage of 475, was the best on Mississippi State. He had the third highest in the SEC. He's drove in 46 runs and scored 63 times as well. I mean, it's just a magical season. And he was a guy that we talked about as someone that we initially just kind of going off of it without like really diving into it, thought, okay, he doesn't have any eligibility. But then the more we've like looked into it, sounds like he does have some eligibility. And so if that's the case, like you put him with Reese coming back, and then maybe you add Henry Ford. I mean, he's one of those guys that we've talked about that can completely change this team into a big time contender next year.
yeah. But and I mean, we almost kind of got overlooked, like you mentioned when we were talking about how good this lineup can be. When you put him in the middle with Aiden Teal and Valencius, the other Vitas, I believe, yeah.
Yeah,
Those 4 guys, those 3 guys with Ace Reese in the middle of the lineup, that's pretty dangerous. That's I mean, it's kind of sneaky dangerous too, because none of those guys, I mean, obviously now Ace Reese has the name recognition. Aiden Teal does, coming some of that from his brother, high recruit, all of that. So, I mean, all of those things, I mean, that just kind of makes you even more excited. I don't know. Baseball just ended. I'm ready for it to start again.
Yeah. And looking it over, they believe it's not a fully like guarantee, but they believe Sullivan does have another year because he redshirted a season while at USC Upstate. So that is why they believe he has an extra year. Another guy, so this is according to the Clarion Ledger, they believe Pico will likely not be back, according to what they're reporting. And so that obviously we know it would be a big loss. You got Ryan McPherson back, and Charlie Foster, and then Evan Ciari has another year of eligibility. So if he comes back, now you're looking like a pitching staff with also Tomas coming in, Valencius. Like, this is a team that's starting to round into form to be pretty good next year.
Yeah, looking pretty good, pretty fast. And I was just looking up because I remember seeing it earlier that Noah Sullivan was named on the watch list for the John Olerud Award, which is best 2-way player.
Right.
He did make it to semifinalist, but was not selected as a finalist. So I think the awards might have missed that. They got a little overshadowed by Ace Reese's numbers too, and didn't look at what else he was doing. But yeah, this team is starting to take shape, and I'd like to see either. I want Pico back. I understand if he's done, he's done. But and I've seen a lot of rankings that have him kind of around that 100th prospect mark, which maybe you can talk him to coming back if he's kind of like that 3rd round pick. Maybe you can talk him into coming back for one more year, trying to push him up the draft board if he has a good year, especially because it doesn't look like it'll be all on him from a pitching standpoint, like it was for half of this season.
I was about to say that, and then Parker comes back, and so you'd hopefully that would help influence his decision. But he pitched the most innings he had by far in his career this last season, and we saw at the end he was not the same Pico as early in the year because he started to wear out, and I think that's partly what's hurting his draft stock. But again, he never pitched that many innings before. Right. This upcoming season, he's now experienced pitching that much, but he shouldn't have to because you have Evan, who really came on at the end. You added Tomas. You hope Ryan McPherson takes that next step. Ben Davis is coming back. Like they have some arms in that bullpen that should take some of the pressure off of him. But I also understand him being like, it's time to go. Like it's just ready. It's time. I want to take that step. But that is obviously a conversation him and Brian O'Connor will have. I'm sure Justin Parker will be right in the middle of those conversations. So we'll just have to wait and see what ends up happening. But if he comes back, now you're talking about a World Series type team.
Yeah, especially, I believe in the whole old adage, you can never have too much pitching.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see them add one more arm. I don't know who's out there. It's hard. The baseball portal is not as easy to track as the others because there's just so many more teams and players, and rankings are so weird. But I'm sure there's at least one more good arm floating around out there, and I'd like to see them go get it.
Yeah, for sure. All right, coming up next. Next up in Starkville, we're going to tell you what we're looking forward to in the weekend. Also, there was some pretty good news that kind of relates to what we were looking forward to. We'll talk about that. That's coming up next. Well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, Landon and I typically don't talk about next up in Starkville, but we had a topic come up that we're like, okay, how do we fit this into the show? Do we need to talk about it earlier in the recruiting strategy? Do we need to talk about it later on? And then that's when we both revealed, hey, we actually have the same next up in Starkville, so might as well just throw it into that segment because it fits the segment. But spoiler, our next up in Starkville is just because baseball transfer portal is going on right now. We both kind of feel like, yeah, they had that kind of run, but I think you're going to start seeing some more dominoes fall. We both do. And that actually started on Wednesday, but we still expect more to come. Ryder Woodson, who is a freshman at NC State, infielder, so not an outfielder.
He did play two games in the outfield.
Yeah, he did play some. But hopefully he plays more infield. But he has transferred into Mississippi State. He had a 361 batting average. He had, 36 at-bats, 13 hits. He played in 26 games, started 5. So he was more of a rotational player. But that would be a guy you could hopefully develop.
Yeah, he came on strong at the end of the year. All of his home runs were in the regional. So, that lets you know he came on at the end. And, he is mainly an infielder. 8 of his games were at third base, so you probably don't expect him to get too many games there this next year. He did have 6 at shortstop. He's a little bit bigger than your average shortstop. 6'6" or 6'2", 182 is what he's listed. So, 6'2", 6'3", 180, 190. That's not your typical shortstop body. Yeah. So I would guess he's probably more of a corner infielder that provides depth this year, and maybe fills in an outfield when one of those guys needs a day off. You get him some at bats here and there. He's a development piece, but those are guys that I think are very important to get in the portal. Those are the guys that if you have a guy with talent, bring him in.
Yeah, no, I agree. And some things I'm looking forward to this weekend, like I said, the transfer portal. Eric Becker and Henry Ford specifically are the two I'm looking at. Both Virginia guys. Both guys that Mississippi State sit in a pretty good spot. I don't know if we'll hear about Ford just yet because the draft process is – the draft is what I feel like is the thing that would pull him away from Mississippi State more than Tennessee right now. But I even said from the start when O'Connor left, like Tennessee would be the one team if he doesn't go pro to watch out for because he's from that area. And he had a visit with them, and apparently that went well. And so we'll see what ends up happening there, but those two would be the names I would pretty much have circled. And then if Becker comes, he had a highly talented brother that was committed to Virginia, that is still committed to Virginia as far as I know. I didn't see him decommit unless I missed it. Maybe he comes as well.
Yeah. I'm definitely on Henry Ford watch. The amount of times I type in Henry Ford baseball into Google, because if you don't type baseball, you're going to learn a lot of weird stuff about
Ford Motor Company.
Ford Motor Company 100 years ago. So make sure you type in baseball if you're looking for stuff. Not a lot of news coming out of his camp. So I really think we're going to wait and see until the draft, which kind of sucks. And also, even if he does commit, if he goes in the first round, he's probably not coming here, even if he commits.
Right.
So it would be better, in my opinion, if he doesn't commit, because I don't want that to happen. Be like, yeah, he's coming. And then 3 weeks later, he's actually on his way to like Lehigh Valley or some.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. That's very accurate. But all right. Well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen today. For your second listen, check out The Portal Show. Brian Smith has the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. find the portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. All right, I'm Jaron, National College Football Writer at Athlon Sports. Check out my work over there. That's Landon. Follow us, Locked On Mississippi State. We're on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. We post all videos daily, Monday through Friday over there, so check that out. We also post a question, a little comment in the comments below. And so we love your feedback and interaction there. We also post a poll over on YouTube, and I forgot to pull that up to read the results from yesterday's poll. So I slacked on that one. So I'll have to get back to that next week. But the poll, we see the questions there too. So we love the feedback there, but also just responding to the poll. We like that as well. But have a great weekend. And remember, Hail State.
Hail State.